Salut chers internautes de Télé'Asu, j'espère que vous allez bien et bienvenue à cette nouvelle édition de Echostech. Je reçois un invité prestigieux, le directeur général de MTN. Arrivé dans notre pays depuis un mois à peine, Wanda Matandela va parler entre autres des 25 ans de la présence de MTN Cameroon dans notre pays. Qu'est-ce qui est exactement prévu dans ce cadre-là et aussi comment est-ce qu'il perçoit l'environnement des affaires. Et évidemment, on abordera le sujet de leadership. Qu'est-ce que c'est exactement? Bienvenue. Monsieur le directeur général, est-ce que vous pouvez un tout petit peu nous parler de vous, de votre parcours?
Thank you so much, Charles, for having me. Much appreciate the opportunity. Yes, Wanda comes from South Africa, South African born. Studied there and worked most of my career in South Africa. And Wanda as an individual is a very passionate person, you know, a very curious person, a very dedicated, you know, person into whatever that I do. But I think most importantly, into contributing to the betterment of society.
Vous êtes là depuis un mois maintenant. Comment est-ce que vous avez été accueilli au Cameroun?
It's been a very warm welcome. Both, I think, from the Cameroonians. The first time when I landed here in Yaoundé in January. And I must say that, you know, the Cameroonians really made me feel welcome. The key stakeholders that I visited then as well made me feel very, very welcome. But also, I think, after the few days having been in the office, even the MTNers that I work with, they've made it exceptionally warm for me, and I really feel at home, as it were, right now.
Alors, c'est vrai que vous n'êtes là que depuis un mois, mais est-ce que vous avez déjà une idée de l'environnement socio-économique du Cameroun? Quelle est votre perception?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I would rather maybe like to look at it in different ways. You know, I think Cameroon as a country, I think it's a country very, very diverse. I think the Cameroonians are people that have come to realize that take pride in everything that they do. I think you see it in the love of football. You see it in you know, diverse kind of cultural dishes. We are all South Africans, to be quite honest. You always find some similarities, you know, here and there. But I think from a business point of view, I think this is a thriving economy. It's an economy that is full of opportunities. I think I'm particularly impressed by the ongoing engagements and people wanting to, you know, engage on how we can always contribute. But also, I think I must mention the spirit of, you know, Cameroonians around, you know, being business-minded. Even when you're driving in the streets of Douala, you know, you find, you know, it's a vibrant city. The energy is there, you know, and that energy is not only just what I see or feel in the street, it's also the energy that I see it in my office as well. You know, it's people that are passionate and people that have got a can-do attitude, you know, and that for me is really motivating and inspiring.
Comment se porte MTN Cameroun aujourd'hui? Dans quel état avez-vous trouvé cette entreprise?
MTN Cameroon, I must say that it's one of the best, you know, performing opcos or markets within our group. And of course, I'm not surprised, you know, when I walked into Cameroon, I think the spirit of, you know, the MTNers that we have, a very can-do attitude like I've just mentioned. It's people that, you know, are prepared to contribute to the society more than anything. I think they definitely take to heart the role and understand the role that they play in society and in Cameroon. And I think they are super proud about, you know, the contribution that they've made, not only just in MTN, but I guess also to the society. And I'm saying this because, you know, listening to the, you know, ongoing engagements that I have with staff formally and informally, it's always about what can we do better, you know, to service our customers. Which to me, I think it's always about maintaining the higher purpose. You know, because we are a purposeful-led organization. And to see that, you know, that mandate and the strategy, you know, and the belief that comes from group, you know, that permeates in all the, you know, opcos within our group, I see it very live in Cameroon as well.
Vous êtes à peine arrivé dans notre pays que le principal concurrent a annoncé avoir le leadership sur le marché des télécommunications au Cameroun aujourd'hui. Comment est-ce que vous réagissez à cela?
I think if you look at, the different markets, both in emerging markets and also even in mature markets, right? And I come from a market, for instance, where you've got 4 main operators. And already, I mean, in that market, you can pick up that there's lots of talks around consolidation. And I think when you start looking at the trends of what's happening in mature markets, you pick up that there's consolidation that happens. The smaller players don't necessarily, tend to be sustainable. And simply because of the high barriers to entry into our industry. It's high investment, and not necessarily sometimes high return as people might think. But I think if you bring it back to Cameroon, that it's you've got 3 players in the market and 2 dominant players being ourselves and Orange. I think it gives us an opportunity to really play a meaningful role. This way, I mean, when you start looking at the leadership, and you talk about leadership in a market, I think you kind of like have to look at it, all-encompassing. I think meaning that, you've got different metrics that you look at. I mean, you can talk about the subscribers that you have in the market. You can talk about the infrastructure, that you have in the market. You can talk about how efficient you are in the, resources that you deploy in the market. You can talk about so many other things, that are there. From our perspective, I mean, if you start looking at, the fact that we've been in this market for the longest time, we've had, seen or experienced continuous growth over the years. I mean, we serve millions and millions, of customers.
Alors, est-ce que cela signifie que vous contestez ces chiffres? Parce que 2 milliards de francs CFA de plus par rapport à votre chiffre d'affaires en 2024, vous n'êtes pas d'accord?
When you look at the data, I think it's a resultant of, the mandate and the strategy that we are driving. I think what is more important at the same time, like I said, you come into a country, whenever we're in authorities, it's all about making sure that we connect lives. And I think that's why then, and this is important not only just for us from an MTN perspective, but I think even from a government perspective. And that's where, for me, the partnership, starts. So whenever, what is important is always about how many people are we able to cover, in Cameroon. And the sole purpose of doing that is to make sure that we uplift the standard of Cameroonians. We make sure that Cameroonians are not left behind, in the world. We talk about what we call bridging the, the digital divide. And bridging the digital divide starts, at the fact that, we make sure that we connect people. So when you then start talking about subscribers and all of those things, it's important, I think, when you talk about it in context, and I think what we should be focusing on is to saying, what is the gap that is there that still needs to be filled by all operators working with government in making sure that, 1, every Cameroonian has got access to, internet, 2, that we work together in making sure that it is affordable in the form of devices and all of that to bring, everybody to have, access to internet. So when you start looking at all of those things, and that's why when, again, you talk about leadership, let's not just only look at just the numbers as a resultant of, what we see, but also you look at what each company has got a role to play in contributing towards the higher purpose. So, I mean, if I can give you an example, for instance, I mean, way back, for instance, I mean, MTN, we contributed towards making sure that, we invested in the WEX cable. The WEX cable is the West African, cable system that connects the 2 continents. Discussion started way back in 2009 by few MNOs at the time. And we were the leading, negotiator around that, And what happened is that, of course, you've got landing stations in the country. And one of the landing stations, which is here in Limbe, we ended up giving it to Comtel. in making sure that, the country prospers. And that's why today, which you might not know, that most of the Cameroonians actually enjoy, high-speed internet through those investments. And I think, that's why for me that, whenever we talk about, targets, some of these targets are more for internal purposes. The way we structure how we measure ourselves to say we seeing ourselves successful and all of that. But I mean, those are kind of like short-term. I think long-term is making sure that we build a sustainable business that contributes to the betterment of society.
Vous évoquez justement l'impact d'une entreprise. Vous estimez qu'il faut regarder en arrière sur les 25 dernières années pour mesurer l'impact d'une entreprise. À votre avis, qu'est-ce qui fait la particularité de MTN? Quel est justement l'impact de MTN aujourd'hui au Cameroun après 25 ans de présence?
25 years for one is a very long time. It's 2 decades and half a decade. And in those 25 years, I think we have done a lot as MTN, invested in communities. But I think in investing in communities, we are looking at areas where, for instance, we believe we can make a meaningful impact. What I mean by that is, investing in areas that we know for a fact that will build a better tomorrow for Cameroonians. When you talk, for instance, in areas of health, when you talk of, education, I will give you an example, for instance, just last week, which I've had an opportunity of, being part of, we handed over an e-container to an underserved community in Bilonge, with computers over, just over 70. These are young kids that under normal circumstances, would have never had an opportunity of using, a computer and having access to internet. But if you ask me, that child in a few years' time, the first thing that they will think of, that their first experience of engaging, and using a computer was brought to them by MTN. And I think for me, that's when you start by saying you're not putting profits first, but at the same time, you're putting the investment back into the society. I mean, just only again, last week, we handed over 3 water points in the north, in villages that really have, water has been a scarce resource. And those are the things that, to me, actually, as organizations, we should be doing by far, and not putting profits and talking about, how much revenue we're making and all of those things. But I think it's critical that we always look at the higher purpose and making sure that, how do we serve the societies, that we live in. But most importantly, that we are not left behind, as a country, when you start comparing with what is happening in the rest of the world.
MTN a donc 25 ans cette année et plusieurs activités sont annoncées. La campagne a démarré. À quoi est-ce qu'on doit s'attendre?
Just encourage that, our viewers must just, stay tuned. I cannot, reveal everything right now. But like I said, they expect that, now because we are celebrating 25 years and that there's more that we can give back to them.
Vous êtes donc là depuis un mois et quelles sont vos priorités pour MTN Cameroun? Sur quoi est-ce que vous allez mettre le plus d'énergie pendant votre mandat à la tête de cette entreprise?
Talk about the investment that we have committed, that even our group president is committed. It goes towards one of 2 things. One, improving, our service, quality of service in existing, infrastructure that we've built. 2, targeting in areas where, for instance, we currently have coverage gaps. That talks to us, making sure that we improve our coverage. And 3, in just making sure that, we continue to improve in the quality of service that, people expect from companies like us. So going forward, I think for me, it's something that we will continue doing every day. Like I said, we work in an ecosystem, right? We've got dependencies. We work with government, we work with other, key players in the market in making sure that we improve that. And all of us have a role. And that's why through, various platforms that we have, we keep on engaging, and working together to try and make sure that we improve on the quality of service.
Monsieur le directeur général, avez-vous un message pour vos abonnés, pour votre public?
I think, if we go back to the role that we play, because remember, our business is evolving. As much as we continue, to connect people from a telecommunications perspective, we're doing the same, in bridging the financial inclusion, right? And I think it's much more prevalent here in Cameroon with our mobile money products. I mentioned it to my colleagues that if you compare Cameroon, for instance, to some of the developed worlds, or maybe even the country that I come from, that when you start looking at, how many people have got access to bank accounts, in this country is actually different. It's about the penetration of people that have got wallets. So mobile money plays a very, very, very important role, in the financial inclusion. I would like to really say thank you to the Cameroonians that have been with us, that have really showed, trust in our capabilities, and the role that we play in the society. And I can give them commitment that, as we embark on the next 25 years of our existence in Cameroon, we will carry them along and we will make sure that, we continue to play our role in bridging the digital divide and whilst we're promoting financial inclusion.
Merci, chers abonnés, d'avoir regardé cette autre édition d'Echostech. Je serai heureuse de vous retrouver dans une prochaine édition. Ne partez pas sans vous abonner sur nos plateformes digitales et sur notre chaîne YouTube.